Restraint. When a leader is silent on the subject of virtue, the people are discouraged from practicing it. Meanwhile, a leader who revels in riches encourages thievery. Value virtue over wealth, and the people's heart will be at rest. Wise leaders do not accumulate treasures, but seek to quiet the hearts of their people. They soothe the people's appetites and strengthen their bones. They treasure innocence and protect the simple from the schemes of the clever. When a leader practices restraint, everything will be in peace. That's chapter 3 of the Tao Te Ching. And the first thing that comes to my mind in this is the thought of who is practicing restraint in leadership right now. And I am referencing here political leadership. I'm discussing, the structural choices that we make. It's interesting that we have within us as the people, the governed, all just powers derive from our consent. Yet when we look to leaders, there are very few who actually fulfill the promise of good leadership. There's the old joke that, a camel is a horse designed by a committee. And to a certain extent, what we have is a camel of a political body. We have kind of this ugly, misshapen, sometimes functional in some settings, body, which certainly does things. But more often than not, I wonder about the leaders who are silent on the subject of virtue. You see what's happening right now with a completely fabricated resume by a representative. Interestingly, you see the same thing on the other side of the aisle when you look at Joe Biden's earlier political campaigns. It's no surprise that people are discouraged from practicing it because in the letter of the law and the coverage that law provides, there's space for actions which are not virtuous. And when we look at leaders who revel in riches, it doesn't take much to see the stock portfolios or the increased net worth of so-called leaders and the encouragement of thievery by many others. It's really difficult and perhaps annoying even to listen to someone talk about what's going on now and try to apply something from 2,500 years ago. But I think it gets to a core point, which is the title of restraint and whose job it is to ensure that restraint is practiced by those in power. I think it's a very noble idea to believe that every single person who gets into power is going to be able to practice restraint. However, when we see the examples of the swamp in America and many other governing institutions across the world, we see that absolute power corrupts absolutely. And the structures that were put into place acknowledge this very problem. And I think throughout the Federalist Papers and throughout the discussions and the letters that we have access to of people as they try to put together this country, a lot of these similar ideas were discussed about virtue, about the nature of putting the people's hearts at rest, about not accumulating treasures in leadership, about protecting people. There's an incredibly compassionate message at the heart of capitalist thought, at the heart of Enlightenment thought, at the heart of capitalism generally, which is the value of each human to their lived experience and to their life. And within that also rests the power of each person, being the governed, to remove their consent, to insist on restraint. And when that restraint is not respected, to peacefully say no, to step away, and to leave.